Kira stood at the viewing window of the diplomatic vessel, watching the human military outpost grow larger against the black ocean of space. The station looked different from Velian architecture. It was angular and gray, built for function rather than beauty. Kira's long fingers pressed against the cool glass, and the pale blue skin of their reflection stared back with wide, nervous eyes. The war had come to the Velian people like a storm they never saw building. For 3 generations they had lived in peace. They grew crops, studied the stars, and raised their children without fear. Then the Moltari Empire arrived. 3 colony worlds burned before the Velian Council understood that peace could not be negotiated with those who only understood violence. That was when someone mentioned the humans do. Kira had studied human culture during their time at the academy. They knew about Earth, the small blue planet that had sent explorers across the galaxy 2 centuries ago. Humans were strange. They ate meat. They kept predatory animals as pets. Their entertainment included watching simulated violence, but they were also known for their poetry, their music, their capacity for kindness, and they were known as the best fighters in the galaxy. The vessel docked with a metallic clang that vibrated through the floor. Kira adjusted their uniform and walked toward the airlock. 3 other Velian diplomats waited there, all older, all carrying the weight of their people's survival on their thin shoulders. The eldest counselor, Ven, nodded to Kira. "You will be our liaison with the humans," Ren said. His voice was soft as all Viveltian voices were. "You understand their ways better than we do." Kira wanted to say they did not understand humans at all. Reading about them was different from meeting them. But they simply nodded. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The human station smelled different. There was a metallic tang in the air mixed with something chemical that made Kira's nose wrinkle. The gravity was slightly heavier than the ship, and Kira felt the extra weight in their knees. The corridor was lit with harsh white lights that reflected off metal walls. A human waited for them at the end of the corridor. He was shorter than Kira expected. Humans were supposed to be large and imposing, but this one stood perhaps a head shorter than Kira. He had dark hair cut very short and dark eyes that watched them approach without blinking. He wore a gray uniform with several patches Kira did not recognize. His face was smooth and young, but something in his eyes looked old. "Counselor Ven," the human said, his voice deeper than Kira expected. "I'm Daeyeon, squad leader. Welcome to Aramis Station." The humans did not bow or make any of the greeting gestures Kira had read about. Dae simply extended his hand. Friend hesitated, then reached out. The human shook his hand once, firmly, then released it. Daeyeon's eyes moved to Kira. "You're the liaison?" "Yes," Kira said. Their voice came out higher than they wanted. "I am Kira." Dae nodded. "Once good. Come, we'll brief you on the situation." They followed him through the corridors. Other humans passed them, all wearing the same gray uniforms. None of them stared. They simply glanced, assessed, and moved on. It was efficient but unsettling. Kira was used to curiosity. These humans looked at them the way someone might look at equipment. The briefing room was small and practical. A large screen covered one wall, showing a map of Velian space. Red marks indicated the worlds the Moltari had taken. Blue marks showed human patrol routes. The room smelled like the bitter drink humans called Coffee, 11 other humans stood in the room. They turned as June entered, and Kira felt the weight of 12 pairs of human eyes. Most had dark hair and dark eyes, some had scars. All of them had that same strange calmness, like still water over something deep and hidden. "This is my squad," Dihun said. He pointed to each human as he named them. Juwon, our medic; Taman, heavy weapons; Hyan Wu, explosives; Sunhai, sniper. He continued through the list, but Kira struggled to remember all the names. The humans nodded or raised a hand in greeting but said nothing. Juwon, the medic, was a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked like she should be teaching children, not fighting wars. Taman was broad-shouldered and silent. Hyan Wu grinned at Kira with what seemed like genuine friendliness. 12 of you, Counselor Ren said slowly. The Mulari will send thousands to Veltas 3, yes. Dayan said simply. We were told humans were the best, but 12 soldiers against an army seems were enough. Dihan interrupted. It was not said with arrogance, it was stated a simple fact. Like saying water was wet. Show us the target world. The briefing lasted 2 hours. Dihun asked questions in a rapid, efficient manner. How many civilians on Velis 3? What was the terrain like? Where were the landing zones? What weapons did the Mulari prefer? The other humans listened and occasionally made notes on small devices. Kira noticed that none of them seemed worried. Multari were brutal warriors famous for their savagery. Each one stood 3 times the height of a human and wore natural armor plates. They enjoyed causing pain. They took trophies from those they killed. Even the recordings of their attacks made Kira's stomach turn, but these humans looked at the images of Mulari warriors the way someone might look at a difficult but solvable problem. When the briefing ended, Counselor Ven and the other diplomats returned to their ship. Kira remained behind as planned. They would travel with the human squad to Velis 3 and coordinate the defense. Get your things, Dahayan told Kira. We ship out in 1 hour. Kira returned to the diplomatic vessel and collected their small bag of belongings. Their hands shook as they packed. This was real. They were going to war. The Valian people were not warriors. They had defense forces, but those forces had crumbled against the Mulari. Now they were trusting these strange, calm humans to save them. When Kira returned to the station, the humans were loading equipment onto a transport ship. The vessel was purely functional with no decorative elements at all. It looked fast and mean. Juwon approached Kira with that gentle smile. First time in combat? Kira nodded, not trusting their voice. Juwon's smile turned sad. Stay close to us. You'll be fine. There was something in the way she said it that sent a small chill down Kira's spine. Not a threat, but a promise, a certainty. That made Kira wonder what exactly these humans did in combat that required someone to stay close. The transport ship's interior was cramped. The humans settled into their seats with practiced ease, checking weapons and equipment. Kira sat near the back watching them work. Hyan Wu hummed a tune while inspecting small devices that Kira assumed were explosives. Sunhai cleaned a long rifle with careful, almost loving attention. Taman was already asleep, his head tilted back, completely relaxed. Day sat across from Kira. He watched them for a moment, then spoke quietly. Scared? Kira nodded. Good, fear keeps You sharp, he paused, the Mathari are dangerous, but they're predictable. They rely on size and aggression. We rely on something else. What? Kira asked. Dune and LT Unk and GT's expression did not change. But something flickered in his eyes. Something that made Kira's breath catch. We rely on the fact that we don't stop. The transport ship's engines roared to life through the viewport. Kira watched the station fall away. Somewhere ahead was Veltus 3, the agricultural world, where Kira had spent childhood summers. Somewhere behind that was the approaching Mulari fleet carrying warriors who had destroyed 3 worlds already, and between them were 12 humans who looked far too calm. Clear's throat. Kira closed their eyes and tried to sleep, but rest would not come. The human's quietness was somehow more unsettling than panic would have been. It was the calm of predators who knew exactly what they were going to do. The journey to Veltus 3 would take 3 days. Kira wondered what they would learn about humans in that time. They wondered if they truly wanted to know. The transport ship landed on Veltus 3. Just after dawn, Kira stepped off the ramp and breathed in the familiar air of their home world's colony. The smell of growing wheat filled their lungs, mixed with the sweet scent of blooming corn. Flowers in the distance, purple mountains rose against a pink sky. This was a peaceful place, a place for farmers and families. Soon it would be a battlefield. The settlement's defense coordinator, an elderly Velian named Marek, met them at the landing pad. His face showed relief when he saw Kira, then confusion when he counted only 12 humans. This is everyone? Marek asked quietly. This is everyone, Dihun confirmed. He was already scanning the settlement with those dark, calculating eyes. Show me your defenses. What defenses existed were pitiful. Veltus 3 had basic walls around the central settlement, more to keep out wildlife than enemies. There were some energy barriers, but they were designed for farming equipment accidents, not military assault. A few dozen Veltian volunteers had gathered with hunting weapons, looking terrified and trying to hide it. Dihun walked the perimeter. Silence. The other humans spread out, examining every angle, every approach, every piece of cover. They moved like water, efficient and purposeful. Kira followed Day, taking notes on a data pad. How long until they arrive? D asked. 48 hours. Kira said maybe less. Day nodded. We'll need to fortify the eastern approach. The western side has natural barriers, set up fields of fire. Here, here, and here. He pointed to positions that Kira would not have considered. Evacuation routes for civilians through the southern valley. If we fall, they run. If you fall, the Mulari will hunt them, Kira said quietly. They won't catch them. Dihun's voice was flat, certain, because the Moltari won't be in any condition to hunt anyone. The humans worked through the day with frightening efficiency. Tammin set up heavy weapons at key positions. The guns were massive, designed to punch through armored vehicles. Watching him handle them alone was unsettling. Each weapon must have weighed twice what Kira weighed, but Tammin moved them like they were toys. Hyan Wu placed his explosives with cheerful precision. He hummed while he worked, occasionally stopping to tell jokes to any Velian brave enough to get near him. Kira watched him bury devices along the eastern approach, marking their positions on a map only the humans could see. What do those do? Kira asked, pointing to a cluster of small spheres Hyen Wu was arranging. These. Hyen Wu grinned. His smile was warm and genuine. These are area denial. They won't kill, but they'll hurt a lot. The trick is to make the enemy afraid to advance. How does pain make them afraid? Hyen Wu and LT Unc and GT's grin widened, but something cold entered his eyes. Pain is just information, right? It tells you that you're damaged, but the right kind of pain delivered the right way tells you something else. It tells you that continuing forward will be worse than going back. That's what these do. Kira did not fully understand, but something in Hyen Wu and LT Unc and GT's explanation made them uncomfortable. Sun Hai took a position on top of the settlement's tallest building. She set up her rifle with meticulous care, checking angles and distances. Kira climbed up to bring her water and found her lying prone, eye to the scope, breathing slow and steady. Can you really hit targets from this distance? Kira asked. Sun Hai did not look away from her scope. Yes, how far? Far enough. She paused. The Mulari commanders wear red insignia. I'll start with them. An army without leadership is just a mob. Jiwen established a medical station in the settlement's community center. She organized supplies with quick practiced movements. Kira noticed she had far more equipment for trauma than for illness: bandages, surgical tools, stimulants, and things Kira did not recognize. You've done this before, Kira said. It was not a question. Jiwen glanced up, her expression soft. Many times. Does it get easier? No. Jiwen and LT Unc and GT's hands paused in their work. It shouldn't get easier. Day it gets easy as the day something's wrong. Night fell over Veltus 3. The humans had transformed the peaceful settlement into something else. Every approach was covered by weapons. Every blind spot was trapped. The buildings themselves had been reinforced. Escape routes were marked and cleared. Kira tried to sleep but could not. Their mind replayed images of the Malthari attacks they had seen in briefings. The massive warriors tearing through Velian defenders like they were made of paper. The casual cruelty, the sounds of screaming. Kira got up and walked through the quiet settlement. Most of the civilians were in the shelters now, deep underground where they would be safe. The Velian volunteer defenders slept in shifts, exhausted from helping the humans prepare. Kira found Hyen on watch at the eastern wall. He stood perfectly still, looking out at the darkness where the enemy would come from. A cool wind blew across the fields, making the wheat whisper. Can't sleep? Hyen asked, without turning. No. Kira joined him at the wall. Are you afraid? Dihun was quiet for a long moment. Fear is useful. It keeps you alert. It makes you check your equipment twice. It reminds you that death is real. But are you afraid now? Always. He turned to look at Kira, and in the dim light his face looked human and vulnerable. Anyone who says they're not afraid before battle is either lying or insane. Fear keeps you alive. Then how do you function? How do you fight when you're afraid? Tahun's expression shifted, becoming something harder. Fear is what we feel. Terror is what we give them. There's a difference. Kira did not understand and said, so you'll see tomorrow. Dayan returned his gaze to the dark fields. Get some rest, real rest. Eat something, drink water, empty your bladder. When the fighting starts, you won't get another chance for hours. Kira wanted to ask more questions, but something in Hyen's posture suggested The conversation was over. They returned to their quarters and forced down some food. Their stomach protested, but Kira ate anyway. Dawn came too quickly. Kira woke to the sound of alarms. The Mulari were early. The settlement sensors had detected their dropships entering the atmosphere. Kira rushed to the command post where Dayan and his squad were already assembled. The humans were checking their weapons one final time. The movements were automatic, born from doing it hundreds of times before. Load. Check safety off. Haiyan Wu was still smiling, but it was a different smile. Now tighter, sharper. Sun Hai had already taken her position on the roof. Through the command post window, Kira could see her lying motionless, a statue with a rifle. Kira, Day's voice cut through their panic. Stay with Jiyuan, behind the lines. Whatever you see us do, don't interfere, understand? Why would I interfere? Dayan's eyes met Kira's, and for a moment something vast and dark looked out from behind them. Because you might think we've gone too far, but we haven't. Remember that. Before Kira could ask what he meant, the first explosion rattled the settlement. On the screens they could see the Moltari drop pods slamming into the ground 2 km away. Massive hatches opened and warriors poured out. Kira had seen them in recordings, but seeing them in real time was different. Each Molthari stood 3 m tall, covered in natural armor, plates that gleamed red and black. They carried weapons that looked like they had been designed to cause maximum suffering. They roared as they advanced, a sound that carried across the fields and made Kira's bones vibrate. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. In the first wave alone, 12 humans stood between them and the settlement. Dayan touched his ear, activating his communication device. All positions confirm, ready. One by one the humans confirmed. Their voices were calm, conversational, like they were confirming lunch orders rather than preparing for battle. Sun Hai, you have first shot. Haiyan Wu, wait for my mark on the traps. Tamon, free fire when they hit the 1,000-meter line. Dayan paused, watching the approaching horde. Remember, the goal isn't to kill them. All the goal is to make them wish they'd never come here. Kira stood next to Jiyuan in the medical station. Through the window they could see the eastern approach. The Molthari were advancing in a massive wave, roaring their war cries, firing weapons into the air in intimidation. Several Velian volunteers on the walls broke and ran. Kira did not blame them, but the humans did not move. They stood at their positions, calm and ready, watching the approaching horde like farmers watching a coming storm. Sun Hai's rifle cracked once. In the distance, a Mulari commander collapsed. The rifle cracked again. Another commander fell. The Moltari kept coming. They hit the 1,000 mine and Tamon's heavy weapons opened fire. The sound was deafening, a continuous roar that shook the building. Kira watched explosive rounds tear into the Moltari ranks, sending warriors flying, but there were too many. They kept coming. 500 m Haiyan Wu mark, Dean said quietly. Yan Wu pressed something on his control device. The field exploded, not with killing force, but with something worse. Kira watched Mulari warriors stumble into traps that shredded their legs. Others triggered devices that released clouds of something that made them scream and clawed their eyes. Advance slowed, confused, hurt, angry. But still they came. 300 m. Jiyuan checked her medical supplies one more time. Her hands were perfectly Steady, Kira's hands were shaking. Stay down, Jiwon said softly. The humans moved forward. Kira's mind could not process it at first. The Molthari were charging toward them, hundreds of massive warriors howling for blood, and the humans were advancing toward them. Not holding position, not taking cover. Advancing, Daein led the squad out from behind the defensive walls and into the open ground. They moved in formation, each human covering angles with practiced precision. Taemin's heavy weapon was slung across his back. Now he carried a shorter weapon, something that fired in controlled bursts. The sound of it was rhythmic, almost musical. Sunhai's rifle continued its steady conversation with death. Each crack meant another Moltari commander fell. The enemy's formation was losing cohesion. Warriors unsure who should lead now that their officers were dropping. The Moltari reached the humans. A warrior 3 times Dae swung a massive blade down toward him. Dihun stepped aside so smoothly it looked like the warrior had missed on purpose. He fired 3 shots into the warrior's exposed armpit where the natural armor plates had gaps. The Moltari fell, screaming. Another warrior charged at Hyen Wu, who threw something small at its feet. The device exploded with a sound that made Kira's ears ring. Even inside the building, the Mulari warrior collapsed, its legs no longer working properly. It tried to drag itself forward with its arms. Hyen Wu shot it twice in the head and kept moving. His smile was gone now. His face showed nothing at all. Taemin used his weapon like a club when enemies got too close, then switched back to shooting when he had distance. A Moltari managed to slash him across the arm, cutting deep. Taemin looked at the wound, looked at the Moltari, and shot it in the face. Then he kept fighting as if nothing had happened. Kira watched Jiwon through the window. The medic was watching the battle too, her expression unreadable. She saw Taemin's wound and made a note on her data pad, but did not move to help him. Not yet. He was still fighting, so she let him fight. That was when Kira understood something terrible. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to destroy. Every movement was calculated to cause maximum damage. Every shot was placed with precision. They were not panicking or desperate. They were working. A Molthari broke through the line and charged toward the settlement, toward the medical station where Kira and Jiwon waited. It was wounded, bleeding from multiple hits, but still moving with terrible purpose. Its eyes found a window where Kira stood. Jiwon moved faster than Kira thought possible. She pulled a weapon from her belt, stepped outside, and fired 4 times. The Mulari fell 3 m from the door. It twitched once, then went still. Jiwon returned inside, checked her weapon, and set it back on her belt. Her hands were steady. She looked at Kira and spoke in that same gentle voice. Are you okay? Kira could not answer. They had just watched the kind medic kill an enemy warrior like it was routine, like she had done it 1,000 times before. Outside, the battle continued. The Mulari were not retreating, but their advance had stopped. They were trying to surround the humans, using their numbers to overwhelm, but the humans did not stay still long enough to be surrounded. They moved constantly, flowing like water around the enemy, always striking from unexpected angles. Sunhai's position changed. Kira saw her on a different rooftop now, still firing, still claiming lives with each shot. She must have moved during the Chaos, repositioning to find new angles. The Mulari were getting angry. Kira could see it in how they moved, how they fought. They were used to enemies who broke, who ran, who begged, but these 12 humans were doing none of those things. They were fighting with cold efficiency. That seemed to infuriate the Mulari more than it frightened them. That was when Kira saw something that would haunt them forever. A Multari warrior was on the ground, wounded but alive. It had dropped its weapon and was making a gesture that Kira recognized, a surrender pose in Mulari culture. A warrior who dropped their weapon and bowed their head was seeking mercy. Jiwon was closest. She walked over to the surrendering warrior. For a moment, Kira thought she would take it prisoner or simply move past it. Jiwon pulled out a knife and stabbed it in the throat. The Multari's eyes went wide with shock, then empty. Jiwon cleaned her knife on the warrior's armor and kept walking. Kira's stomach twisted. They had seen killing today, but this was different. This was not combat, this was execution. Dahan's voice came through the communication channel, and Kira could hear it through Jiwon's earpiece. No prisoners, make them afraid. Kira understood. Then this was not about defeating the enemy. This was about breaking them. The humans were not just fighting, they were teaching a lesson. More Mulari tried to surrender as the battle wore on. None were accepted. Each one was killed efficiently without hesitation. The message was clear: you came here to fight, so you will fight until you die. The Mulari began to understand. Kira could see the change in how they moved. They were no longer confident. They were starting to look for escape routes. An explosion behind the Multari lines made Kira jump. Hyun Woo had circled behind them somehow and destroyed their command position. The large banner that marked their rally point was burning. The Multari force, so confident an hour ago, began to fracture. Some tried to retreat. Taman's heavy weapons cut them down. Others tried to push forward harder, hoping to break through by sheer force. Day Squad adapted, shifted, and killed them. A young human named Youngsu, who Kira had barely noticed during preparations, took a direct hit from a plasma weapon. The bolt caught him in the chest and he went down hard. Kira saw it happen and was certain he was dead. Jiwon was already moving. She crossed the battlefield with her medical pack, sliding into cover next to Young Su. Kira watched through the window, expecting to see her confirm his death. Instead, Jiwon ripped open his armor and started working. Her hands moved with incredible speed, injecting things, sealing wounds, doing something to his chest that made his body convulse. Whole time she was in the open, exposed to enemy fire. She did not seem to notice or care. 30 seconds later, Young Su's eyes opened. 30 seconds after that, he was sitting up. 1 minute after being shot with a weapon that should have killed him. Young Su was asking if he could keep fighting. Jiwon gave him something from her pack, an injection of some kind. Young Su stood up, picked up his weapon, and returned to the battle. He moved stiffly, clearly in pain, but he moved. Kira realized they were screaming without making a sound. What were these humans? How could someone survive that? How could someone want to keep fighting after that? The Mulari were screaming too, but they were making sound. The roars of confidence had turned to howls of confusion and fear. Their force was breaking apart. Some were fleeing now, running back toward their drop ships. The humans pursued them. Dai gave an order that made Kira's blood turn cold. Hunt them down, don't let them regroup. The humans split into smaller groups and chased the fleeing Moltari. They moved through the fields like predators, tracking wounded prey. Every enemy that ran was followed. Every enemy that hid was found. Every enemy that begged was ignored. Kira watched Sunhai track a Moltari warrior who was trying to crawl away with both legs damaged. She shot at once, not in the head for a quick death, in the arm that was pulling it forward. Then she waited. The Moltari struggled, tried to keep crawling. She shot its other arm. She did not shoot to kill. She shot to stop it, to make it lie there helpless, screaming. Other Mulari heard those screams as they fled. They knew one of their warriors was being tortured. The screams followed them as they ran. That was when Kira understood what Dayan had meant about terror. The humans were not just defending the settlement, they were sending a message to every Moltarian. The fleet above, they were making sure that the survivors would return to their ships with stories of the humans who did not stop, who did not take prisoners, who hunted fleeing enemies like animals. The battle lasted 3 more hours, but it was not really a battle anymore. It was a hunt. By the time the sun reached its peak, the field was silent except for the wind. The Moltari who had not escaped back to their dropships were dead, all of them. The humans had left none alive. On the battlefield, Dai's squad regrouped. At the settlement walls, they were covered in blood, both their own and the enemies. Taman's arm wound was still bleeding. Hyang-Su had a hole burned through his armor that showed scorched skin beneath. Others had cuts, bruises, and burns. They were laughing, not cruel laughter, not mocking, just relief and exhaustion and the strange joy of survival. Hyan-Wu was telling a joke about something that had happened during the fight. Sunhai was actually smiling. Taman was letting Ji-Yuan look at his arm while he drank water. They looked human again, like the kind soldiers who had shared food and shown pictures of family. But Kira had seen what they became in battle. Ji-Yuan noticed Kira standing in the doorway of the medical station. She walked over, her gentle smile back in place. You did well, you stayed calm. Kira's voice shook when they spoke. You killed someone who surrendered. Ji-Yuan's smile faded. She was quiet for a moment. Yeah, why? Because we needed the others to be afraid. An enemy who thinks they can surrender will fight harder. An enemy who knows there is no mercy will break faster. She paused. The settlement was quiet now, the kind of quiet that comes after violence, when the world is holding its breath. Kira sat on the eastern wall and watched the purple mountains turn gold in the afternoon sun. The wheat fields below were trampled and burned in places. Bodies still lay where they had fallen, waiting for collection teams that would come tomorrow. Dayan had ordered his squad to rest. They would remain in the settlement for another day to ensure the Moltari did not return. Then they would leave, moving on to wherever the next contract took them. Kira could not rest. Their mind was too full of images. The way Ji-Yuan had killed the surrendering warrior, the way Yang-Su had gotten up after being shot in the chest, the way the humans had pursued fleeing enemies, not with anger but with calm purpose. Most disturbing was how normal they humans seemed now. Taman was having his arm properly bandaged by Ji-Yuan, complaining about the sting of antiseptic. Hyan-Wu was eating rations and reading something on his data pad. Sunhai was cleaning her rifle with the same loving care as before, humming softly to herself. They looked like people, normal people who might live in any settlement on any world, but Kira had seen them become something else when battle came, something efficient and terrible and unstoppable. Footsteps on the wall made Kira turn. Young human named MJI approached. She was one of the quieter members of the squad, someone Kira had barely spoken to. She sat down next to Kira without asking, looking out at the same view. Beautiful world, Minji said. Her voice was soft. It was, Kira replied. Before today it still is. MJI gestured at the mountains, the sky, the fields. This will heal. You'll plant new crops. Children will play here. Again, we made sure of that by killing hundreds. Yes. Me did not look away from the view. Does that bother you? Everything about today bothers me. Kira's hands clenched. I don't understand how you can do what you do and then be so calm afterward. MJI was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Can I tell you about Earth? Kira nodded. Earth is a death world. Do you know what that means? Me did not wait for an answer. It means almost everything there can kill you. The weather kills people. The animals kill people. The plants kill people. Even the water, if you're not careful, can kill you. She shifted to face Kira more directly. Humans did not evolve to be the strongest or the fastest. We evolved to be persistent. Our ancestors hunted prey by chasing it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We cannot kill a deer with our strength, so we followed it until its heart gave out. That sounds cruel, Kira said quietly. It is cruel, but it kept us alive. MJI looked at her hands. We brought that same trait to everything else. When we developed tools, we made them better by trying again and again. When we built societies, we kept rebuilding them after they fell. When we learned to leave Earth, we kept trying. Even after our ships exploded and our people died. She paused. We cannot turn it off. That drive to persist, to never stop, to keep going no matter what happens. It is in every part of us. It made us great explorers, great builders, great artists, and it made us terrifying warriors. You make it sound like you have no choice, Kira said. We have choices. We choose when to fight and when to walk away. We choose who we protect and what we stand for. Me's expression hardened slightly, but once we choose to fight, we cannot fight halfway. We do not have that option. When we commit to something, we commit completely. Kira thought about this. Is that why you killed the ones who surrendered? Complete commitment. Partially. MJI looked uncomfortable. Also psychology. The Molari respect strength. They do not respect mercy. If we had taken prisoners, they would have seen it as weakness and come back stronger. By showing no mercy, we showed strength. They understand. They will tell their empire that humans cannot be defeated, only avoided. So you become monsters to avoid future battles. We become monsters so you do not have to. Mi's voice was gentle. Your people are peaceful. That is beautiful. That is precious. Someone needs to stand between that peace and those who would destroy it. That is what we do. Before Kira could respond, Boa, the communication specialist, came running across the wall. Her expression was urgent. Commander Dayan needs everyone at the command post. Now they followed Boa back to the command center. The rest of the squad was already gathering. Day stood at the main console listening to something through his earpiece. His face was neutral, but Kira had learned to read the small signs. The tension in his jaw meant something important was happening. Dayan pulled out his earpiece and addressed the squad. Mulari fleet is leaving the system, all of it, not just pulling back but jumping to FTL and running. A ripple of surprise went through the group. Running meant retreat, complete retreat, but we only defeated one landing force. Tammin said they have thousands more warriors up there. I know. Dayan pulled up display showing intercepted Mulari communications. Bora has been listening to their chatter. They are calling us Death Walkers. The survivors from the landing told stories that are spreading through their fleet. They are afraid. Bora stepped forward. The communications are fascinating from a psychological standpoint. The Mulari Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds, but they have never encountered an enemy like us. They are describing humans as unkillable, relentless, and without mercy. One commander said fighting us was like fighting the concept of death itself. Kira felt cold despite the warm afternoon. 12 people made an entire fleet retreat. 12 people showed them what would happen if they stayed. Day corrected. The Mulari can do math. If 12 humans could do that much damage, how many humans might the Velian Council hire next time? What would 100 humans do? 1,000. They decided it was not worth finding out, so it's over. Kira asked. They won't attack Velian space again? Probably not for a long time. Dean looked tired suddenly. They will go find easier targets, species who do not have human allies. This is how we work. We make examples so extreme that others learn to avoid the fight entirely. The squad began to relax the tension. Leaving the room, Yan Wu let out a whoop of celebration. Tammin smiled. Even Sunhai allowed herself a small grin. But Kira did not feel celebratory. They felt hollow. You make war to prevent war, Kira said slowly, working through the idea. Yes. Dayan met their eyes. We do terrible things in small doses, so even more terrible things do not happen in large doses. Every Malthari we killed today is a Velian civilian who will never be killed tomorrow. Every enemy we break is a battle your children will never have to fight. That is a heavy burden, Kira said. Yes. Dayan's expression was unreadable. That's why we carry it instead of you. The rest of the day passed in quiet activity. The humans maintained their equipment and prepared for departure the next day. Velian civilians began emerging from the shelters, looking at the scorched fields and the human soldiers with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Kira watched a group of Velian children approach Hyan Wu, who was sitting on a supply crate eating. The children were curious but scared. Hyan Wu smiled at them, that warm, genuine smile, and offered them pieces of a sweet he had in his pack. Soon they were laughing together, and Hyan Wu was showing them magic tricks. This was the same human who had placed explosives designed to cause maximum pain, the same one who had smiled while shooting wounded enemies. Now he was making children laugh. Kira could not reconcile the two images. Juan found Kira near the medical station. As evening approached, she sat down next to them without speaking. They watched the sunset together in silence. For several minutes. You're struggling with what you saw today, Juan said. Finally. How do you do it? Kira asked. How do you kill with such efficiency and then smile at children? They are not contradictory actions. Juan pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. She looked young and vulnerable. That moment, I smile at children because I killed the ones who would have hurt them. I can be gentle because I was harsh when it mattered, but does it not change you? Does the violence not poison who you are? Jiwon looked at Kira with those sad, kind eyes. Of course it changes us. Every person we kill takes something from us. Every time we become the monster, we have to work harder to come back to being human. She paused. That's why we hold on to the gentle moments so tightly, the jokes, the kindness, the connection with others. Those things remind us why we fight. They keep us human. What happens if you lose that? Kira asked. What happens if the violence takes too much? Then we stop being soldiers and become the thing we fight against. Jiwon's voice was quiet. That is the line we walk. That is why we check on each other, why we tell jokes after battle, why we care about civilians. We are constantly pulling ourselves back from the edge. It sounds exhausting. It is. Jiwon stood up, stretching, but it is necessary. Someone has to do this work. Someone has to stand between the peaceful people and the violent ones. We chose to be that someone. She offered Kira a hand up. Come on, Dehun wants to do a final debrief before we leave tomorrow. You should be there. The debrief was short. Dahyun reviewed what had worked and what could be improved. He praised Young Soo for his resilience. He noted that Sunhee's position changes had been perfectly timed. Dawn came cold and clear. Kira stood at the landing pad and watched the humans load their equipment onto the transport ship. They moved with the same efficiency as when they had arrived. Every motion practiced and purposeful. 3 days ago, Kira had watched these same people arrive. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. The settlement was already beginning to recover. Velian work crews were clearing debris and preparing to replant the damaged fields. Children played near the community center, their laughter carrying on the morning breeze. Life was returning to normal because the humans had made sure it could. Counselor Vin had arrived during the night with other members of the Velian Council. They stood in a small group near the transport, speaking in low voices. Kira could see the relief on their faces mixed with something else, something that looked like unease. Kira understood that feeling now. Tae Min walked past carrying a large equipment case. His wounded arm was properly bandaged now, and he moved without apparent pain. He nodded to Kira as he passed, just a simple acknowledgement, but it felt significant. Somehow Kira turned to find Dehan approaching. He looked rested, his uniform clean, his equipment packed. He looked exactly like he had when Kira first met him at the station, like the battle had never happened. The council wants to speak with you. Day said they are discussing a permanent contract with us. They want your opinion. Why mine? Because you fought beside us. You saw what we do. Dahun's dark eyes studied Kira's face. They need to hear from someone who witnessed it. Kira joined the council members. Counselor Ven smiled warmly and gestured to the settlement around them. Thanks to our human allies, Veltus 3 is safe. The Multhari have fled our space entirely. He paused. We are considering a long-term contract having humans as permanent defenders of our worlds. The other council members nodded agreement. They looked at Kira expectantly. Kira thought carefully before speaking. Humans saved us. There is no question About that, they are effective, professional, and committed to protecting those who hire them. But, friend prompted, hearing the hesitation in Kira's voice, but you need to understand what you are inviting into your space. Kira looked at the 12 humans preparing their ship. They are not like us. They do not fight the way we would fight. They do not show mercy the way we would show mercy. When you hire humans, you are hiring something that cannot be fully controlled or predicted. Another council member, an elder named Tyra, frowned. Are you saying they are dangerous to us? No, they would never harm us. Their code is very clear about protecting those who hire them. Kira struggled to find the right words, but they will do things that will disturb you. They will make choices that seem cruel. They will become something terrible to defend something precious. You must be prepared for that. Friend was quiet for a moment. So you advise against a permanent contract. I advise that you use them only as a last resort. Kira met his eyes. Keep them in your contact list. If another existential threat emerges, call them immediately. But do not make them a permanent presence. We should not grow comfortable with what they represent. The council members exchanged glances, finally nodded slowly. Wisdom beyond your years. Kira, we will consider your counsel carefully. As the council members walked away to discuss, Jiwon approached Kira. She carried her medical pack, ready to load it onto the ship, heading home. Jiwon asked, soon? I need to file my report first. Kira paused. Thank you for everything. You saved my people. Jiwon's expression was gentle. Just doing our job. She hesitated, then added, I'm sorry you had to see what you saw. I know it was difficult. Do you regret it? The things you did, I regret that they were necessary. Gi looked out at the settlement, at the children playing, but I don't regret doing them. Those children are alive because we did what needed to be done. That has to be enough. Is it enough for you? Gi smiled. Sadly, some days, other days I have to work harder to believe it. She touched Kira's shoulder briefly. Take care of yourself. What you witnessed yesterday will stay with you. Talk to someone about it when you get home. Do not carry it alone. Hyun-woo and Sunhye came over to say goodbye. Hyun-woo and LT Unk and GT's smile was as warm as ever. Hey Kira, you did great out there. Mostly Asins panicked during their first battle. You kept your head. I was terrified, Kira admitted. Everyone is terrified their first time. The trick is functioning anyway. Hyun-woo clasped Kira's hand in that human gesture of farewell. Maybe we and LT Unk and GT work together again someday. Hopefully not though. No offense, none taken. I hope we never need you again. Sunhye nodded to Kira. She spoke rarely, but when she did, people listened. You have courage, not the courage to fight, but the courage to see truth and not look away. That is rarer. One by one, the other squad members said their goodbyes. Tam Min, who Kira had barely heard speak during their time together, told them, my family thanks you. They're safer now because you helped us protect your people. That matters. Young-soo, who had been shot in the chest and kept fighting, grinned at Kira. Tell your historians to get the story right. We were 12, not 20. People always inflate the numbers. MJI, who had explained human persistence, hugged Kira briefly. Remember what I told you. We are what we are. Understanding that is the first step to working with us. Bora, the communication specialist, gave Kira Small device, this has our contact information if your people ever need us. Again, use this. It is encrypted and will reach us anywhere in the galaxy. Kira took the device carefully. It was small and light, but felt heavy with implication. Finally, Dayan approached. For his farewell, he extended his hand, and Kira shook it the way humans did. You asked me if I was afraid. Dayan said. Before the battle, do you remember? Yes. I'm always afraid, but I have learned to use that fear to stay sharp. To stay human. He paused. Don't let what you saw yesterday make you hate us. What we did was terrible, but the alternative was worse. Remember that when you write your report. I will. Kira hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. The day you stop feeling fear, the day the violence stops affecting you, what happens then? Dayan's expression was serious. Then I retire. I go home to Earth and I let someone else take my place, someone who still feels the weight of it. He looked at his squad, loading the last of their equipment. We all have that agreement with each other. The day we stop being haunted by what we do is the day we stop doing it. That's how we avoid becoming actual monsters. Does that day come for most of you? Eventually, some sooner than others. Dayan smiled slightly. I've been doing this for 15 years. I think I have maybe 5 more left before the wait becomes too much. Then I'll go home, maybe open a restaurant or teach history. Try to remember that there's more to humanity than what we do in war. The transport ship's engines began their startup sequence, a low hum that built to a roar. Day closed Kira's shoulder. Briefly, take care, Kira. You're going to have nightmares for a while. Let yourself have them. They mean you're still human too. The humans boarded their ship through the viewport. Kira could see them settling into their seats, talking and joking with each other. Normal people heading home from a job, people who had killed hundreds just yesterday, people who would smile at children today. The transport ship lifted off smoothly, rising into the morning sky. Kira watched until it was just a bright point against the blue, then gone entirely. The settlement felt different without them, safer somehow, but also more vulnerable. Kira understood now why species across the galaxy both sought human protection and feared it. Humans were a cure that was almost as dangerous as the disease. Kira returned to their temporary quarters and sat down at the small desk. It was time to write the report. The Velian Council would distribute it to militaries and diplomatic corps across their space. Future generations would study it to understand what it meant to fight beside humans. Kira stared at the blank screen for a long time, trying to find the right words. Finally, they began to type. Report on combat operations with human mercenary forces by Liaison Officer Kira. Velian Defense Coordination. They paused, then added a subtitle. On fighting beside humans, understanding the cost of survival. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Kira wrote about the battle, but also about the moments between, the jokes and the kindness, the way humans could be gentle and brutal in the same breath, the terrible efficiency of their violence, and the care with which they treated their allies. Kira wrote about fear and terror and how they were different things. Fear was what you felt facing an enemy. Terror was what you felt understanding what your allies were capable of. Most importantly, Kira wrote about necessity, about how the universe was not fair or kind, and sometimes Survival required terrible choices about how humans had made themselves into something that could make those choices so others did not have to. The report took hours to complete. When Kira finally finished, they read through it one more time. It was honest and difficult and uncomfortable. Good. Truth should be uncomfortable sometimes. Kira attached a final note to the council. The humans saved us. The Mulari are gone and will not return, but I must urge caution. The power we have allied ourselves with is vast and frightening.